Who is building massive wooden structures in Santa Fe National Forest? In the depths of the Santa Fe National Forest in New Mexico, a baffling mystery has quietly unfolded, leaving forest officials, rangers, and visitors searching for answers. Scattered throughout the forest are massive wooden structures built entirely from fallen aspen trees and limbs. Some of these constructions rise more than 20 feet into the air and stretch dozens of feet across, forming shapes that range from crude teepee-like frames to dense cone-shaped towers of stacked wood. Their size, scale, and deliberate design suggest careful planning rather than random activity, yet no one has come forward to explain their purpose. What has intensified concern is the sudden increase in their appearance. During the winter season spanning 2017 to 2018, Forest Service workers reported discovering more of these structures than ever before. The rate at which they appeared suggested that whoever was responsible had accelerated their efforts. Despite repeated patrols and investigations, officials have been unable to identify any individual or group connected to their construction. With no clear explanation, the Forest Service has taken decisive action by dismantling each structure as it is found. The primary reason for their removal lies in the danger they pose. According to forest officials, many of the structures contain hundreds, and in some cases nearly 1,000 pieces of dry, seasoned wood. Their shape closely resembles oversized kindling pyramids, a design known to ignite quickly. Even more troubling is evidence that fire rings were used inside several of them, dramatically increasing the risk of an uncontrolled blaze. In a forest environment already vulnerable to wildfires, such conditions represent a serious threat to both the ecosystem and public safety. While some observers have speculated that the structures could have been intended as shelters, art installations, or ritual sites, their scale and hazardous design challenge those explanations. Others have suggested that they may serve a purpose not yet understood, perhaps tied to unknown traditions or symbolic practices. However, without any claim of responsibility or supporting evidence, these ideas remain purely speculative. In response to the growing concern, the Santa Fe National Forest Service issued a public statement requesting information from anyone who might know who is responsible. Officials emphasized that constructing such structures is prohibited under federal law, with penalties that can include significant fines and possible imprisonment. Despite these warnings, the mystery persists. The unanswered questions surrounding who is building these towering wooden forms and why continue to fuel unease. Until their origin is uncovered, the structures remain one of the forest's most unsettling and unexplained phenomena, standing as silent reminders that even well-patrolled wilderness areas can still conceal secrets. The mysterious Cleveland Museum of Art image. This mysterious photograph, captured inside the Cleveland Museum of Art during preparations for a Claude Monet exhibition, has become a topic of fascination among art enthusiasts and paranormal researchers alike. The photographer, who was documenting the interior architecture for reference shots, was working quietly in an otherwise empty gallery space. Staff later confirmed that the museum was closed to the public at the time, and no visitors were permitted on the upper level. Yet when the image was reviewed later, a figure stood clearly on the balcony above, watching over the scene like a silent observer from another era. The figure appears to wear period clothing reminiscent of the late 19th century, complete with a long coat, brimmed hat, and a full beard, a striking resemblance to Monet himself. His posture seems calm and composed, hands resting casually on the glass railing as if overseeing the activity below. What makes this moment particularly eerie is that none of the workers present recalled seeing anyone standing there. No footsteps were heard, no shadow passed across the floor, and no security personnel reported someone out of place. The figure simply appeared only in the captured frame, as though manifesting solely for that brief second in time. Some have suggested that the image is nothing more than a trick of light or a coincidental reflection. However, others believe it represents something far more profound, perhaps the spirit of Monet returning to witness an exhibition created in his honor. The museum walls behind him display scenes reminiscent of his beloved landscapes, making the presence feel almost purposeful. A few whisper that artists of great passion leave imprints behind, especially in places filled with their work and admiration. Whatever the truth may be, the balcony man has never appeared again, and the photograph remains one of the most compelling unexplained museum images in recent years, a haunting reminder that the past may linger closer than we think. Mysterious apparition. This unsettling photograph has circulated quietly online for years, yet it has never lost its chilling effect. According to the owner, the image was taken during a high school outing to an abandoned mansion in Utah, a location whispered about locally for its haunting reputation. While the owner remained outside in the car, friends entered the old structure to explore its silent halls. At some point that night, a photograph was snapped inside the darkened building. Later, when the picture was reviewed, something strange appeared, something none of them remembered seeing at the time. In the dim image, two pale figures stand near what appears to be a stairwell or doorway. Their faces are unnaturally bright compared to the surrounding darkness, and their expressions seem fixed, almost emotionless. The long hair, vacant eyes, and faint ghostly glow make them appear disturbingly out of place, like they are not part of the physical world. The background is shadowed almost completely, yet between the two shapes, another darker form seems to loom, its eyes reflecting faint light. It is as though three entities are present, watching quietly from inside a forgotten room. The owner admits to having no interest in the paranormal at the time, and no explanation now for what was captured. He recalls that the mansion was silent that night, with no electricity, no other visitors, and no mannequins or staged props inside. The photograph, although now reduced to a screenshot from a laptop, retains enough clarity to make the figures undeniable. The mysterious note and vanishing of Granger Taylor. Granger Taylor was an eccentric yet brilliant Canadian mechanic whose mysterious disappearance in 1980 has remained one of the most curious and haunting unsolved cases in Canadian history. Known for his mechanical genius and deep fascination with space and extraterrestrial life, Taylor was both admired and misunderstood by those who knew him. Living in the small town of Duncan, British Columbia, he had built a reputation for his unusual lifestyle and extraordinary talents. But when he vanished without a trace, leaving behind a cryptic note that hinted at interstellar travel, his story took on an almost mythic quality. Taylor's note, which was found in his workshop shortly after his disappearance, suggested that he had left Earth voluntarily. He claimed that recurring dreams had promised him a 42-month journey aboard an alien spacecraft to explore the universe, and he declared that he would return once that voyage was complete. In the message, he explained that he no longer required his earthly possessions and instructed his family to follow the guidance in his will. This startling letter, combined with his previous claims of communicating with beings from beyond, set off a storm of speculation about his fate. Those closest to Taylor were deeply puzzled. While some considered the possibility that he had staged an elaborate disappearance to pursue a life elsewhere, others believed something far more extraordinary had occurred. Granger Taylor had long expressed a belief in the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence and had even constructed what he called a spaceship on his family's property. Although it was non-functional, it was a physical symbol of his intense curiosity and vision. Friends said he had been experimenting with radios and transceivers, claiming to have received signals or messages from advanced beings. He spoke about space as though it were not just a dream, but a destination. On the night he disappeared, something unusual did take place. Local residents reported hearing a loud bang, and some even claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky. While skeptics dismissed the lights as lightning from a severe storm that occurred that evening, others questioned whether they could have been part of the encounter Taylor believed was coming. He had previously told friends, including his close companion Keller, that if contact with advanced life occurred, it might happen during bad weather as cover. The coincidence of these phenomena on the same night he vanished only deepened the mystery. Taylor's connection to dynamite also fueled speculation. He had access to explosives, and some theories suggest that the loud bang might have been an explosion. However, those who knew him well insisted that he was highly knowledgeable and careful with such materials. They argued it was extremely unlikely he would mishandle them or do anything reckless. Keller, who had worked with Taylor on various mechanical projects including the spaceship on his farm, described him as intelligent, practical, and grounded. Despite his otherworldly beliefs, Taylor was not regarded by those close to him as someone who acted irrationally or impulsively. Keller and his family were among the last to see Taylor before his disappearance. In hindsight, Keller said there was nothing to suggest his friend was preparing to leave permanently, or that he was in any distress. The note, the absence of any clear trace, and the circumstances of that stormy night have left an enduring sense of ambiguity. What seemed like fantasy to some was entirely real to Granger Taylor. In the years since, his story has become a cultural touchstone. For some, Taylor represents a tragic figure whose longing to connect with something greater led him down an uncertain path. For others, he is remembered as a dreamer and visionary, someone whose mind reached far beyond the boundaries of the world around him. Whether he ventured into the wilderness and met an unfortunate fate, or whether something more mysterious happened, remains unknown. Granger Taylor's disappearance is not just a case of a missing person. It's a story that touches on larger questions about human curiosity, belief, and the unknown. His fascination with the stars, his tireless tinkering, and his final message left behind a legacy that still sparks imaginations today. In an age where so many seek to explain the unexplained, his story remains a powerful reminder that there are still mysteries we may never fully understand. Stacy Aris vanishes in Yosemite National Park. On July 17, 1981, 14-year-old Stacy Ann Aris vanished without a trace while exploring a trail in Yosemite National Park. What began as a peaceful horseback riding adventure turned into one of the most perplexing disappearances in the park's history. Despite an exhaustive search effort that spanned days and involved hundreds of people, no conclusive evidence ever emerged. Over 4 decades later, Stacy's case continues to baffle investigators and haunt those who have looked into her mysterious disappearance. Stacy Aris was born on September 29, 1966, in Saratoga, California. Known for her active, adventurous spirit, she had a deep love for photography and nature. She was also described as kind, sociable, and full of enthusiasm for life. When she joined her father George and a small group for a multi-day saddle trip through Yosemite National Park in July 1981, it was meant to be a fun and memorable family outing. Along with George, Stacy rode with 6 others through scenic trails, stopping at various points, including a break for lunch at Upper Cathedral Lake. That afternoon, the group arrived at Sunrise High Sierra Camp around 3 in the afternoon. The camp, located at an elevation of 9,600 feet, was meant to be their resting point for the night. After hours on horseback, the others were content to relax, but Stacy wanted to keep exploring. She had brought along her Olympus camera and was eager to capture the beauty of the landscape. She asked her father to join her for a short walk to Sunrise Lakes, approximately 1.5 miles away. He declined, but another member of the group, 77-year-old Gerald Stewart, volunteered to accompany her. They set off together along the nearby trail. After a short distance, Gerald, fatigued by the hike, decided to stop and rest, telling Stacy to continue on and return shortly. She agreed and continued walking. Stacy was last seen standing on a boulder just beyond the tree line, gazing off into the distance. Then, she vanished. When Gerald noticed that 20 to 30 minutes had passed without her return, he made his way back to camp and alerted the group. They immediately began searching, retracing the trail and asking other hikers if they had seen her. A nearby group coming from the direction Stacy was believed to have taken reported no sightings. When their efforts yielded nothing, George Aris informed park rangers that his daughter was missing. The National Park Service launched one of the most extensive search efforts in Yosemite's history. Around 150 individuals participated, including 67 members from the Mountain Rescue Association, trained search dogs, divers, and helicopters. For 9 days and across an area of 5 square miles, they searched for any clue that might indicate what had happened. Yet only one item was found: the lens cap from Stacy's camera, located near the trail at the edge of the tree line. There was no sign of Stacy herself, no trail of clothing or disturbed ground, and no indication of struggle or injury. This lack of physical evidence puzzled searchers. Yosemite is home to wildlife, including mountain lions and black bears, but there was nothing to suggest an animal attack. No blood, tufts of hair, or damage to her belongings were found. Early in the investigation, park officials made a vague reference to Stacy potentially experiencing school or family problems and missing her boyfriend, raising the possibility that she had voluntarily walked away. However, that theory was quickly dismissed. She had taken very little with her, and was reportedly wearing flip-flops or hiking boots. Accounts vary on this detail, which made a long-distance trek unlikely. Some sources claim her father had advised her to wear more appropriate footwear, which she did, while others insist she left in casual sandals. Regardless of her shoes, the idea that she wandered far from camp on a whim seemed improbable to her family. The theory that Stacy may have gotten lost remains one of the more plausible possibilities. If she had strayed off the trail, especially in such rugged terrain, she may have quickly become disoriented. Nightfall brought colder temperatures, dropping as low as 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and without proper gear, it's possible she could have succumbed to exposure. But this theory also leaves lingering questions. Why did the search teams, including trained dogs, never pick up a stronger trail? And why was there so little trace of her? Not even items dropped or disturbed vegetation. Other theories have also been considered, particularly after hikers reported seeing a rough-looking man in the area where Stacy vanished. Despite efforts to track him down, this individual was never identified or located. If this man had encountered Stacy and played any role in her disappearance, there has never been enough evidence to pursue that angle further. Over the years, many have questioned how a young girl could simply disappear in broad daylight, only a short distance from others, without anyone seeing or hearing a thing. The questions deepened when writer Brent Swanser and other researchers claimed that Freedom of Information Act requests related to Stacy's case were denied or heavily redacted. Out of what is believed to be over 2,000 pages related to the investigation, only a small portion, less than 1%, has reportedly been made available to the public. Such secrecy has fueled speculation and contributed to theories involving unexplained or unusual circumstances. While some of these theories veer into the speculative, they underscore the sense of confusion and unease that still surrounds the case. Tragically, both of Stacy's parents, George and Carol, have since passed away without learning what happened to their daughter. Her siblings, now grown, continue to wonder and hope that one day there will be an answer. Though time has passed, the case has not been forgotten by the hiking community or those who have investigated missing person cases in national parks. The disappearance of Stacy Aris is more than just a mystery. It is a reminder of how quickly someone can vanish in the wilderness, even under seemingly safe and calm conditions. With no body, no evidence of harm, and no definitive clue pointing to her fate, Stacy's story remains one of the most haunting unsolved disappearances in Yosemite's history. The mystery of Paige Rancowski. The mysterious disappearance of Paige Rancowski remains one of Michigan's most enduring unsolved cases. On May 24, 1990, the 30-year-old substitute teacher and nanny had a full, yet routine day planned. It began with her driving her mother, Ardis Rancowski, to Detroit Metro Airport for a flight to Atlanta to visit her other daughters. Paige's day continued with a visit to a friend in Canton, Michigan, where she spent some time chatting about her fiancé Steve and her plans to watch his softball game later that evening. It was the Thursday before Memorial Day weekend, and Paige, like many others, was excited about the holiday ahead. After leaving her friend's home around 2:30 in the afternoon, Paige stopped at a local party store. There, she bought a 40-ounce beer and had a pleasant exchange with the store clerk, who later recalled their conversation thanks to Paige's distinctive beaded necklace. This detail would later help investigators construct a timeline of her final known movements. After the brief stop, Paige got back into her car, a silver 1986 Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais, and poured some of the beer into a fast food cup. With the bottle secured, she resumed her drive west toward the Okemos area where she lived. Paige made another stop roughly 30 minutes into her trip, this time at a rest area along the I-96 corridor. A witness later reported seeing her there, noting she had a short and neutral interaction with a man. There was no indication that anything was amiss at that point. However, shortly afterward, at approximately 3:30 to 3:40 in the afternoon, Paige pulled her vehicle off the highway just about 100 yards from the Fowlerville exit. What happened next has been the subject of speculation and uncertainty for over 3 decades. Her car was found abandoned, still running, with her shoes and purse left inside. The fact that the engine was still on ruled out mechanical failure as a cause for her stopping. Multiple witnesses reported seeing Paige outside the vehicle. One said she was barefoot and possibly being guided toward a nearby burgundy minivan by a man who may have been black or Latino. Another witness, notably a law enforcement officer who happened to be driving by, said he saw a man standing in front of Paige's vehicle with an outstretched arm, possibly showing a badge. The officer's initial impression was that the man might have been an off-duty or plainclothes police officer, which added a puzzling dimension to the already strange scene. Between 4:15 and 4:30, Paige had vanished. A Livingston County Sheriff's deputy later encountered her still-running car and marked it as abandoned. It is unclear whether the deputy noticed her personal belongings inside the car at that time, but his report confirmed that the vehicle showed no signs of distress or malfunction. Despite the quick appearance of law enforcement at the scene, Paige was already gone. In the years following her disappearance, extensive investigations have failed to uncover conclusive answers. Her financial accounts remained untouched, and no credible sightings were ever confirmed. Numerous tips over the years have led to searches and even excavations, but none have resulted in a breakthrough. One significant dig, fueled by a promising tip, brought hope to her family and community, but ultimately yielded no results. The mystery deepened with each passing year. Throughout the investigation, her fiancé Steve has been thoroughly ruled out as a suspect. His alibi and cooperation with authorities have been consistent, and he has remained in contact with Paige's family over the years. He is not considered a person of interest in the case. Despite the heartbreak, Paige's loved ones have clung to hope, continuing to seek answers and urging the public to come forward with any information that might help bring her home. Paige Rancowski was described as a caring and dependable woman with a bright smile and compassionate nature. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, and a calm, confident demeanor. Notably, she had a medical history that would make her remains easy to identify. One knee had been surgically replaced, and the other contained 2 metal screws, distinguishing features that continue to be noted in missing persons databases. Now, more than 30 years later, her disappearance remains a haunting mystery. The combination of eyewitness accounts, the peculiar scene with a still-running car, and the absence of evidence has left investigators and her family searching for answers that have yet to come. Each year, around the anniversary of her disappearance, her name resurfaces in the media as a reminder that someone, somewhere, may know the truth. Her case continues to be investigated by the Michigan State Police and is featured in various databases and forums in the hope that one day, a new lead will finally solve the mystery of what happened to Paige Rancowski. The mystery of Frederick Valentich. In 1978, a 20-year-old aviator named Frederick Valentich vanished. Valentich was attempting to fly a training sortie over the Bass Strait, which separates Tasmania and the Australian continent. He piloted a Cessna, a light aircraft, and possessed intermediate experience with approximately 150 hours of flight time. Valentich took off for a training flight on October 21st, travelling 125 miles across the Bass Strait from Moorabbin to King Island. Valentich reported an unknown aircraft following him at 4,500 feet by radioing the Melbourne Flight Service at 7 in the evening. The service informed him that there was no traffic in his vicinity at that moment. Valentich asserted that he observed a sizable unidentified aircraft in proximity, which seemed to possess 4 lighted landing lights. He asserted it traversed 1,000 feet above him, travelling at a rapid velocity. He documented the aircraft's movements for a further 5 minutes. He asserted that it approached him, believing the other pilot was teasing him and that it was orbiting above him. The sole description, apart from the 4 landing lights provided by Valentich, was that the aircraft's surface was sleek and metallic, with a green light. Shortly after initially contacting the Melbourne Flight Service, Frederick Valentich reported experiencing engine difficulties. The radio personnel requested him again to identify the second aircraft. Valentich said that it is not an aircraft, and he said this just before the gearbox was severed. The final auditory signal perceived by the radio officials was a metallic, scraping sound. Officials at the Melbourne Flight Service presumed that Frederick Valentich had crashed. However, an initial maritime and aerial search of the vicinity where he was last seen yielded no results. The Australian Department of Transport investigated Valentich's disappearance, but found no evidence. A few isolated accounts from citizens observing aircraft landing or flying over were gathered. Ultimately, the disappearance was deemed fatal, and the matter was concluded. However, the case was far from concluded. 5 years subsequent to Valentich's disappearance, an engine cowl flap was discovered on Flinders Island. The Bureau of Air Safety Investigation observed that the component originated from the same model of aircraft piloted by Valentich and possessed serial numbers within the same range as Valentich's aircraft. Following the Unsolved disappearance, the public was informed by Guido Valentich, Fred's father, that Valentich was an ardent believer in UFOs and frequently expressed concerns about potential attacks from them. However, there's some researchers that have come to the conclusion that his father was forced to say this in order to take away credibility from what happened. Frederick Valentich applied twice to the Royal Australian Air Force and was refused on both occasions due to insufficient educational qualifications. He was pursuing a commercial pilot license, but had failed his examinations on 2 occasions. He had also received multiple warnings after entering a prohibited zone in Sydney once and flew into clouds twice. Researchers promptly engaged with the case, asserting that he was taken by the UFO. They assert that there are eyewitness testimonies regarding the green lights Valentich described, observing traversing the sky in the vicinity where he was last seen. A collective in Phoenix, Arizona, posits that a UFO encounter is a plausible scenario. The Ground Saucer Watch asserts possession of photographs captured by a plumber, depicting a rapidly moving object traversing the water in proximity to the site of the disappearance. Nevertheless, the photographs have demonstrated excessive blurriness, hindering the unambiguous identification of the object. The case persisted as a subject of discourse among researchers for over 40 years, while no fresh information was obtained until 2014. A UFO action group in Victoria asserted that an unnamed farmer observed a 30-meter aircraft hovering over his farm the morning subsequent to Valentich's disappearance. He asserted that Frederick Valentich's missing aircraft was affixed to the side of the UFO, emitting oil. Notwithstanding persistent accounts of UFO sightings and researchers asserting that Frederick Valentich's disappearance is linked to mysterious phenomena, no substantial explanation for his vanishing has emerged, leaving the mystery to perplex Australia's researchers to this day. Paul Michael Lameitra disappears in the middle of a crowd. On the 4th of July, back in 2012, in the small town of Seward, Alaska, the 97th annual marathon race, known as Mount Marathon, was well underway when one of the runners, a man by the name of Paul Michael Lameitra, appeared to have suddenly vanished while standing out in the middle of a crowd of fellow runners. Regarded as one of the most bizarre and unexplainable disappearances of Alaska, Mount Marathon officials have been struggling to answer the cause of the disappearance of Paul Lameitra and how it would have been possible for one of the most experienced runners to have vanished while taking a routine exercise through a familiar area. According to the Missing 411 report, Paul Michael Lameitra was 66 years old at the time of his disappearance and was considered to be one of the most experienced runners of the event. Even more peculiar, the Mount Marathon race is considered to be one of the oldest and most safe races across the United States, with the marathon first beginning back in 1915 without a single known injury or disappearance in the 97 years since its conception. The marathon is described as being a 3-mile combination run that takes runners up Seward, Alaska's highest point of elevation of 3,000 feet, before coming back down to the base of elevation at sea level. The starting point for the race begins within downtown of Seward, located at the corner of 4th Avenue and Adams Street, winds up to the nearby mountain summit, and winds back down to end at the corner of 4th Avenue and Washington Street. After spending the entire year preparing for the race, Paul told his family that he had planned on taking his time with the race, hoping only to get a respectable time in placing and not concerning himself with racing against the other runners and possibly hurting himself. Considering the fact that Paul was described as being incredibly physically fit by his co-workers at the military joint base Elmendorf-Richardson, it seemed trivial to his family that he would be able to finish the race with a solid time. Additionally, the fact that Paul worked as a counselor at the military base, focused on helping guys leaving the military reintegrate into civilian life, assisting with health and preparing for every possible problem they might occur, helps to demonstrate that Paul Lameitra was known for being thoroughly prepared for any situation he may have found himself in, as well as the fact that had he been suffering from anything, he would have received the proper help he needed. Unfortunately for Paul, shortly after registering for the Mount Marathon race and receiving his bib number 548, any sign of him would completely disappear off of the face of the earth only a few hours after the race began. According to the official search and rescue timeline, it was at around 3 in the afternoon that Paul's family claimed to have last seen him as he was standing at the starting line when the race began. Several hours later, sometime around 6 in the evening, an official race timing crew had spotted Paul ascending the mountain and decided to do a short interview with him to be used in the article for the race later in the day. Given the fact that he appeared to have been in great shape and quite talkative, the lead timer asked Paul several questions concerning the difficulty of the race and how he felt. Paul, without hesitation, stated that he was feeling great and was hoping to finish the race in the next few hours at a brisk walking pace. 5 days later, on the 9th of July, the officials at the race would publish the following article surrounding the encounter. According to the chamber, a race timing crew stationed at the top of the mountain began its descent about 5:45 in the afternoon. The lead timer, who was not named in the statement, spoke with Paul at about 6 when he was nearing the mountaintop. The timer had reported that Mr. Lameitra verbally confirmed that he wanted to continue. After reviewing the segment, it was believed that Paul was the last runner to reach the mountain and should have been within view of a group of other runners and officials watching over the race. Several minutes after Paul was last seen by the race timing crew, a bizarre accident would take place on the descent of the mountain trail, though few details surrounding the event are known. According to official reports, 2 runners had fallen in an area that caused them to have suffered from serious injuries, though the extent of the injuries are not known. Worried about losing their proud history of maintaining one of the safest races, the Chamber of Commerce of Seward immediately began investigating the area, but were unable to find a sufficient answer for why the runners bizarrely turned off into a random area and seemed to have jumped from a mountain's ledge. The 2 runners, having suffered injuries at 2 separate locations in 2 separate incidents, were unable to remember why they had fallen in the given areas. It was at around 8 in the evening when Paul's wife contacted the race officials and let them know that Paul had not come back from the run and was expected to be the only runner left on the trail. She then explained that Paul had been expected to finish the race at around 7:30 in the evening and was running more than 30 minutes later than his expected finishing time. Due to the strange nature of the previous runner's injuries, the race officials did not hesitate another moment and contacted the Seward Fire Department and the Alaska State Troopers to begin an immediate search of the mountain to locate Paul and return him safely to his family. Oddly enough, despite several hundred volunteers working over the course of the next several hours, checking every pathway of the mountain, the teams were unable to locate any sign of Paul. Even after employing the use of helicopters equipped with special thermal imaging and state-of-the-art cameras, no new discoveries were made. Oddly enough, the search teams claimed that as soon as they were dispatched in the area, a sudden heavy fog blanketed the entire mountain. Throughout their search, the teams came across 2 black bears that ran away at the sound of people, but no other form of wildlife was seen in the area. After a team of search and rescue dogs were following Paul's scent, but then suddenly seemed to lose it halfway down the mountain, search and rescue efforts were strained beyond their limits, and no new ideas to help recover Paul were available. On the 9th of July, back in 2012, the local newspaper, the Alaska Dispatch, ran an article that described the search efforts with the following paragraph. Hundreds of volunteers have been involved in the rescue operation, including the Alaska Mountain Rescue, Nordic Ski Patrol, Alaska Search and Rescue Dogs, Bear Creek Volunteer Fire Department, National Park Service, Seward Police and Fire Department, the Air National Guard, Alaska State Troopers, and many Seward residents, as well as racers who returned to Seward to help with the search. End quote. No sign of Paul Michael was found over the week's search, and to this day, no one knows what could have happened to the runner. The official explanation behind Paul's disappearance claims that as Paul was ascending the mountain late into the night, his poor eyesight may have caused him to confuse the running pathway with a previous year's running pathway, as the Mount Marathon race was known for changing its paths every year to provide veterans with a new challenge, and could have caused him to have run off the side of the mountain in an area where his body has yet to be found.